it's like, oh, you're part of this bigger company that's going to have longevity and be successful. What is not advertised is the constant layoffs multiple times a year, whether the economy is doing well or not. And you're also not diversified at all. That's your single income source, most likely for many people. Whereas if you're running your own company and you simply design a model where you're servicing an array of clients, that means your income is diversified across those folks.
Welcome to the Break Free Podcast. This show specializes in interviewing amazing minds, beautiful souls that are changing the world by being entrepreneurs and providing massive value to the marketplace. And today we have with us an example of those amazing people that come to the show. Charles Byrd, brother, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, David. It's a pleasure to be here.
Fabulous. You know, in this the format that I chose to go with in this activity, I never prepared a bio for the guests, and that's on purpose because I seem to have a bit of narcissism, and I guess a lot of the people that I hang out with suffer from the same way. So I just rather than doing that, I just rather ask the question so that people get to know you guys the way that you really are as another human being that happens to be a super successful entrepreneur. So with that, where are you from? What do you do for a living? And where are you right now?
Sure. So I live in the Napa Valley with my wife and two daughters who are 12 and 14. My brother and his family live 3 houses down, and my brother works with me full time in the company. And what I help folks with is I help businesses scale through joint venture partnerships. And this involves building phenomenal relationships and always looking for ways to provide value and serve. So it's been a fun journey out of corporate America into being an entrepreneur. And it's been a very satisfying and lovely transition. And it's beautiful to serve people by helping them create better relationships and get in front of more of their ideal clients in a systematic way.
Incredible. Okay, so we have a lot in common. I spent 10 years in corporate, and I finally broke free from that into my own business. In my case, I thought I was in a corporate jail, and I just made a bigger jail with my own business until I finally broke free from my own business. So, but before we go too deep into it, can you please explain the audience what joint ventures are? Because that could be confusing with, two businesses merged together into a bigger entity. And I don't think that's what we're talking about, isn't it?
Yeah, thank you for asking for that clarification. So the term joint ventures can actually mean quite a few things. In general, I'm referring to joint venture promotions or promotional partnerships. So this is less about two companies kind of merging or doing major structural changes to their business entities to work together, but rather finding great synergies between their clientele, adjacencies that are highly complementary, and then designing pathways to serve your clients or customers in a more impactful way by connecting with folks that solve problems that meet needs they have. So there's a whole array of examples around this, but I'll share an example. Another way to think about this too is leveraging the trust and authority that someone's built up over many years and transferring that over to you, thereby enabling folks to be a lot more open to hear your message and provide a pathway to provide them value. Just a kind of an example from the internet marketing world. I assume a nice portion of your listeners have heard of Brian Tracy.
Probably, yes.
Yeah.
And if not,
So,
then you have to go Google him.
right. So it's just an example. As a gentleman who's been a sales trainer, a high performance trainer, always looking to take models of success and grow them. So over a career of speaking and writing books, he's created a large email and following. His email list is around 500,000 people. So imagine that you have a product or a service that aligns and complements the message he's been sharing with his audience. Someone like Brian invites you in to do a presentation for his folks, and then as revenue comes in from that, you share the revenue. So your product or service, someone else's audience, or vice versa. So that's what I'm referring to when I talk about joint ventures. That can also include direct referrals and things like that.
Beautiful. Let's look back at your past. You were finishing high school, and you had a big decision to make. You go to college, or you go into business, or you get hired. What did you do?
Well, I grew up, I'll say this affectionately, I grew up brainwashed. Go to school, get a job. Go to school, get a job.
Me too, brother, me too.
So guess what I did? I went to school, got my business degree in technology, and then got a job for a software company here in the Silicon Valley. And actually, I started on the help desk, and I'll point out, even though I got a business degree, people weren't talking about entrepreneurship. I'm sure it came up here or there, but the focus was just building a skill set to go get a job. So I feel like I wished that pathway and message had been drilled into my head far earlier, because it's a lot more empowering to chart your own course than being a cog in someone else's wheel. So in any case, I got a job for a $1 billion software company working on the help desk, started doing second and third level support, then founded the project management office, got 12 of us PMP certified, that's the Project Management Institute, then founded my own department and was a director, coming up with
within the organization, the same business.
That's right, all within the same company over that 15-year window. So
how do you get to create your own department? Like those mammoth companies, they move very slow.
well, it was a combination of things. For one, as new technology came to be, like social media started coming up, the people running different parts of the business didn't know anything about it. So I formed the social media and collaboration department, basically so that as that new domain of knowledge came to be, there was someone at the helm. So basically I was always an early adopter and on top of things well before most people, which still is the case. And so they always knew I would know what was coming and then have a good head on my shoulders to guide what the enterprise should do with that information. And I also at the time had a really supportive, cool boss who was like, sure, go for it.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. And looking back at universities, you make a good point. Having a business degree doesn't mean that you want to be an entrepreneur. And I think universities on purpose, they don't teach people to be entrepreneurs. They teach people to be employees. To give an example, Shopify, one of the biggest, largest companies in Canada, about the same size as the top 5 banks. That's how big they got. They have a partnership with the university in Ottawa, where their head office is located, and they made a bachelor's degree specific for Shopify. Like they train people just for that company. And in this case, it works, right? Because I think 95% of the people will never be an entrepreneur. They will have their own jobs. And you and I are privileged enough to have the calling and actually become successful at it. But it's funny because very few have their own businesses, but the very few of us are the ones that fuel the economy at large. So small and medium-sized businesses is like, the largest percentage of the economy in North America, right?
Yeah, and also it's the messaging that's the safe route when it's absolutely not.
Let's talk about that. Tell me, why do you say that?
Well, it's like, oh, you're part of this bigger company that's going to have longevity and be successful. What is not advertised is the constant layoffs multiple times a year, whether the economy is doing well or not. And you're also not diversified at all. That's your single income source, most likely for many people. Whereas if you're running your own company and you simply design a model where you're servicing an array of clients, that means your income is diversified across those folks. So I feel dramatically more secure running my own business than you ever would in a corporate setting. Now, there's exceptions to that. I met a woman recently who's so specialized in her medical training that, there's a lot of safety there. But otherwise, I think if more people knew the empowered freedom that being an entrepreneur provides, they would choose that every time. And at least for me, and it's quite likely the case with a lot of people, I didn't truly even consider entrepreneurship in a meaningful way until one of my peers, one of my friends I went to college with, him and his wife created a company. And by the time they, like a couple of years later, they were starting a second company and buying their third building in San Francisco. And I was like, well, if they can do it, I can do it. And the first time it sunk in, like, oh, you can do this. It's not just for other people. You can do this.
And it's interesting because being an entrepreneur, I still think is the hardest thing I ever done in my life. But it comes with so much rewards, so much freedom. You get to dictate your life. I remember I was a very high-end employee for one of the largest telecommunications companies in the country, multi-billion-dollar corporation. And one day, my department was 1,000 people. One day, they let go 500 people in one day. I wasn't one of them, but it sure like made me realize, oh my God, like if they have to do this being that size, imagine working for like anybody else. There is no job stability. Not these days anyways, right? Like the days where people will get a job and retire in that job, those days are gone, right?
Oh, yeah. Even me staying at the same company for 15 years, people thought it was weird because at this point, people hop between jobs every 3 or 4 years when if you're there too long, they start wondering what's wrong with you.
Yeah, it's the opposite, right?
Yeah, I'd love to tell briefly what inspired me to actually have the confidence to create my own business. So I'd always wanted to, like, I'd come up with different ideas with friends and colleagues and even develop some of those ideas, but it was very difficult working full time and actually getting meaningful progress. And actually the motivation was my mom. She was an OB nurse. She taught nursing school students as well in Central California. And one day I got a call from her and she had that serious tone in her voice. So I was thinking one of the kids she adopted from Sierra Leone in Africa were having trouble in school, but it wasn't that. She'd been in a minor car accident the day before. She thought she was pressing the brake, but wasn't, and hit the car in front of her. And then that day she was reaching for a fork and physically kept missing it by 6 inches. They took her to the hospital and found she had 2 stage 4 brain tumors. And I could barely walk in the house to tell my family this. We piled in the car and went to be with her going into brain surgery that very night. And basically, I stayed at her place for almost a year taking care of her. And my mom lived 1 year to the day from when I got that call. And it crystallized to me so vividly that life is short. If there is an impact you want to make in the world, if there is people you want to serve at a higher capacity, if there's a quality of life you want to create for yourself and your family, now is the time to go make that happen, because your tomorrow is not guaranteed, but right now is. And I decided to create my company, and I had this piece of wood made. It says, I can, I will, end of story. This is from July 2015.
And you still have it. It's beautiful.
Oh yeah. It says here, Charles Byrd started his first company with the love and support of Lori Byrd. That's
your boss.
Yeah.
You're right.
That's right.
It reminds me, what you said is so true, and it's actually ancient wisdom. In James 4:14 in the Bible, it says that you don't even know what's going to happen tomorrow, and life is nothing but a mist. Right? So imagine what's a mist, something that just comes and goes, and you have no idea when it's going to end. And you had experienced that with your own eyes. And the biggest problem we have as people is thinking that we live forever, especially when we're younger, right?
Sure.
You make so many stupid mistakes thinking that you're immortal for some reason. And life isn't like that. For me, my moment of eye-opening was really like seeing all these 500 people live the same day in this company. And back then, everybody was working from work, right? Like working at the office. So in this high-rise building, and I saw all these people being let go with security, right? And I'm like, no, they're like, this is a false sense of stability. It's very dangerous. And back then, I was a single provider of income in the family. My wife was nursing my kids. We've had 3 kids. She was a stay-at-home mom. She was going to school, university part-time. So my family depended 100% on that job. So I got freaked out. That's when I started thinking, I don't know, maybe becoming an entrepreneur will be safer. And when I tell people that don't have a job, I tell them, I am an entrepreneur because I want to diversify my risk. I'm risk averse. And they tell me, you're crazy. No, this is the opposite, right? Being an entrepreneur is the highest risk in the world. And I see it the way you see it. I don't have one job. I have 20 jobs at the same time.
Yeah, I see it as you figure it out on the way. I think that the core part is committing to figure it out, even if you do fall on your face. You don't go, I'll fall on my face and then quit. You go, I'll fall on my face if I do, and I'll get right back up and keep going. I think it's a mindset thing as well. So my dad, who is just here visiting, he's always been super supportive. He taught at the School of Business in Southern Cali, was a dean of a school. But when I was determining if I was going to go back to corporate or start my own company, he's like, go get a job, it's safer. And I'm like, I'm going to figure this out no matter what. And so I think it's the difference, and maybe Jim Rohn would not agree with me, but I look at how do you make it work, not what will go wrong. Now, of course, you look at what risks would be, but it's like, okay, if this happens, what do we do to solve that? Not what will we do to fail? So it changes the mindset to we're going to figure it out, not this is doomed.
Yeah, and that's the attitude that you need, right? It's, for me, I've been in business for 17 years, and that doesn't guarantee anything. I still live, so the way I run my business is I have several months of cash flow in the bank, and I tell my team, we are 7 months away from bankruptcy, a year away from bankruptcy, if we don't keep selling and pleasing our clients. And that's the way I live, because I'm looking for things that could go wrong. I'm fixing them before they go wrong. But guess what? Even like that, I get 10 things that go wrong every month.
Right. So like just getting going, I decided to create a business before I even knew what the business would be. It was just first starting that journey. And then in my process, I can't say it would be super scientific, but I was like, I made a list of around 40 things that I wanted to do or felt good, like I was good at it. And then I was like, okay, what are you actually good at? So the list shrank to like 12. And then I looked at what had been the most beneficial to me in my own work and created a low ticket productivity course. That was my first product. And being,
online or
an online course.
were you still employed or you quit?
No, I had left.
You left and you were developing this product.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that takes a lot of guts.
Oh,
congratulations.
Thank you. Well, I'll make another pretty important point. When people are comfortable, they don't make big decisions. You need to be pushed out of your comfort zone to have the next phase and iteration of opportunity come. In fact, one of the reasons I hadn't left was I made a lot of money and was good at what I did. But then going through that experience with my mom, and then also new management came over at that company, and they wanted everyone to work from the office full time. And I had founded the work from home program. And I lived like an hour and 20 minutes each way. And I commuted for 3 days in a row. And I was like, nope, I'm going to take my severance package and go figure out the next chapter. So that I could have moved or I could have been commuting, but that discomfort forced me to make a decision. And that decision led to this. If they had said, oh, you can work from home, who knows? I'd probably still be there. So I would encourage not being afraid of discomfort. That's where everything bigger and more beautiful comes out of, that uncertainty.
I think breakthroughs happen when the pain of the status quo is bigger than the fear of changing.
That's exactly right.
That's the balance, right? Oh, so that if you have a lot of resistance for pain, you're screwed because basically because you will never change, right? Like you can take it and take it. For me, my job, so I live about an hour and a half away each way from Toronto, from downtown Toronto. And I decided to stay in the suburbs that I live because of my kids, much better education and everything is better here. So I was the one traveling. I had 5 jobs in 10 years and I drove for those 10 years.
It's a long commute. And
one of the things that made me get my own business was the same thing, the commute. I was up to here. But my pain, I resisted a lot of pain, you see?
You're completely right that the pain of the status quo has to be stronger than the fear. And you can apply that across your personal life, your business life. It's true all the way around. So so I created that low ticket, low cost productivity course, and I was brand new to the online space. So I had no list, no connections, but started going to a lot of events and connecting with people online, and quickly found my new peer group of entrepreneurs already had my ideal clients in their communities. So started setting up free presentations to other people's audiences, delivering a high value training, and then offering the deeper dive course, and started making sales and growing the list and helping people get great results, and thought, well, since this is working, what if I take my IT and systems background and simplify and systematize this whole joint venture process, which I did. And eventually people wondered how I book 2 to 6 promotions to other people's audiences every week. And that's, I was at a mastermind in Aspen, and my phone's lighting up with texts and messenger messages and emails and people knocking on the room door like, how do you book so many of these promotions? And so I decided to put together my first event teaching that, called Pure JV. And that's what I've been doing ever since, helping businesses scale with joint venture partnerships. So I'll point out, I didn't start the business knowing I'd end up here. I started with just an initial product and idea. And by getting good at marketing that, it formed the path to what I do today. And like, I just got off a 8-city speaking tour, all around the country. And 6 of my clients have done 1.5 to 6 million in the last year from what I've taught them to do. And none of that was known at the beginning. What was known at the beginning is I was committed to figuring something out.
It's beautiful. And that you're touching, what you're doing is you're touching on passion. And a lot of people have this mistaken. Of course, you have to do what you like and what you're passionate about. However, you can choose what passion is that, right? So for me, I'm passionate about entrepreneurship. Now I run more than 7 businesses. Half of them have nothing to do with technology, but most of them do have, a lot to do with technology. I love technology, and I revolve around that. My main business is custom software solutions for companies that want to grow their profits. However, I was just talking with my wife yesterday about this. If God forbids, at any day, my business gets sold, or I go bankrupt, or I just decide to close the business, I will actually go just in another business venture. Because my passion is making businesses work and making businesses happen. A lot of people get fooled by the idea that if you don't follow your passion, you don't succeed. And that's probably partially true, I guess, but where is your passion? Because your passion was not in the business itself. It was being an entrepreneur. You had a product, a software product, e-learning product, and you ended up doing something completely different as sort of the result of promoting your product.
That's right. It's like an evolution, and you don't know that it will lead there. But when you spend time with a bunch of other brilliant entrepreneurs, and they're always stretching the fabric of what you believe is possible, and you see other people accomplishing these things, and it rubs off, and you keep advancing and advancing, and your own trajectory and evolution and different pivots happen on the way. So it keeps life interesting and fun, and you build a skill set like yours, where you could start a new business tomorrow, and now you have the skill and framework and knowledge, not to mention connections and resources, to actually make that successful. And you didn't on day one. That's because you chose the path to begin with.
Yeah. And what I said, I remember, for the audience, I remember I was so freaked out about having my own business and not having that monthly income, because it's beautiful to get that paycheck every 2 weeks, right? And it's almost like cocaine, right? You get hooked on it. And it's like the paycheck comes regardless until they let you go, right? Until you get laid off, but it comes. I got so freaked out that I told my wife, the worst that could happen is that I can go get a job. And that was a deciding factor for us. And it was actually true. And I was so freaked out still 5 years into the business that I was still considering, if anything happens, I can always go get a job, right? And now, talking to my psychoanalyst, he told me, you are unemployable. You have reached the point where you could never go get a job anymore. But that happened with experience and time. And he's right. Like, I know how to make money through businesses. I know how to add massive value through the knowledge that has been given to me by all the experience, right? And the hardships. Let's talk about hardships. What has been the hardest thing you ever had to face in your business, and how did you get out of it?
Let's see. So, being new to the entire space, initially, like I mentioned, I had no connections in this industry, and limited knowledge of how to succeed. So, I'd say an initial hardship was just charting a course. And so in my case, I had invested in a few online training programs that started teaching me those fundamentals. And then, you get the shiny object syndrome, because everything you hear about, you're like, oh, that's what I need to be doing next. So you start buying and investing in all kinds of things, which I'm a fan of investing, but you need an overall strategy of where it's going. And you also need focus to get results from what you're doing before you go add 6 other things on top. So one of the struggles is to simplify and narrow focus and get results around a plan. And once that's totally dialed in, then you can add the next phase. So it takes focus and strategy and committing to a strategy for a window of time, so that you're not just adding more and more and more and diluting your effectiveness at getting results. It's that saying, if you chase more than one rabbit, you're not going to catch any. So that was, I would say, a struggle. And then there were different points where I was very effective at booking a high volume of promotions, but some of the promotions did great and other ones didn't do great at all. So learning things like the 80-20 rule of partnerships, where 80% of the revenue is going to come from 20% of the partners. So you can actually cut out 80% of the work to get those results. And then always surrounding yourself with smarter people than you and having conversations. So your strategy, the structure of your offers, being fine with investing in yourself. Anytime you have a mindset of, I have to go figure this out myself or do it yourself, you're quite likely making your life dramatically harder than it needs to be. When you can find, okay, here's the thing I want to be doing. Who's the best in the world at that? I'm going to hire them to show me how to do it. Now you don't have to go engineer how to accomplish that. So you can shave years off your progression by strategically investing in yourself and always moving forward.
You touch an excellent point. It took me almost a bankruptcy to learn the Pareto law, the 80-20 law. And then I became an expert at it. I read the book, Tim Ferriss' book, 4-Hour Workweek. I read it about 5 times, I guess, 4 or 5 times. And it's because it was the one book that explained to me with real life situations how that rule gets applied. Because I read many books about that rule before, and I couldn't comprehend, my brain couldn't comprehend that 80% of all the stuff that you do is meaningless. It's the 20% that provides 80% of what you want. And I mean, it's not like that. It could be 70-30 or, 90-10 in some extreme cases. But it is like, I started looking for different things when I learned the law. For example, where I live, we have a highway called the Highway 401, right? There is about 8 million people living in the province where I live. 80% of the traffic is in that one road. And 20% of the traffic is everywhere else, right? So that's a clear example. And you see it everywhere. And the more data that you can accumulate, the more you can see the pattern. So when I was collapsing as a business, I realized I had hundreds of clients that were losing money. So I was losing money with all these people. And then I had 4 clients that was actually making about 90% of the profit. So I went from 110 employees all the way down to 7 people.
Wow.
It was dramatic. And then I started growing up again, always using that rule. So at the end of the year, I always analyze who are the winners and who do I have to either let go or who do I have to fire as clients so that I can keep reusing the rule, because the rule happens again and it just bubbles up again. At the same time, though, you have to be careful, because I remember I at some point I was left with 2 big clients. That's also not good, because if one of those ends, half of your business is gone.
Right. Then you're not diversified.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
we'll go back to the job situation, right?
Yeah, exactly. I remember from that Tim Ferriss book as well, that that same concept of a few eggs will break if you're you can't take care of everything anyway. So if you just focus on what's going to get you the greatest results, some little things aren't going to be taken care of. And guess what? That's just fine, because you're putting your time toward the higher value thing. And I try to think of everything in my life like that, outside of spending time with kids or something. Anything I'm doing, I'm like, if I'm on sales calls, that's a better use of my time than booking this flight or whatever it would be. Like, always outsource anything that is a lower value of your time, unless you personally just love it and you want to be doing that.
Yeah. The only thing, like, I always take books with a grain of salt, and I have been giving them a lot of discernment and wisdom with experience mostly. And one of the things that the book mentions is that you shouldn't own your own house. And I was completely against that rule, because I already had a beautiful real estate portfolio on the side. And it was because I owned my first house. You see, in Canada, we have a rule where your capital gain on your first property is tax-free. And
Nice.
if you use that law to your advantage, you can become a millionaire pretty fast in Canada with that alone. And the team was against having houses, right? It was always, no, rent this, rent that. And
Oh, I owning properties way better.
yeah. Brother, thank you so much for your time. I want to speak of one last topic, that because for me, you are one of the brightest persons I know that have a business. And I know that you run your business super efficiently after what we talked about. How have you grown your company in a way that you're always profitable? Because a lot of people tend to create a lot of ego, and they try to brag about how many people they have employed, and at the same time they're losing money every month, right? I was one of those guys. I wanted to be 1,000 people, no matter what, just because I wanted to have the ego to say that. That's why I went to 110 people. I was losing money every month. When I went down to 7 people, I broke even. And then when I was at about 14, 15 people, I was making a ton of money, right? But I started with me, and I was making money just with me, right?
Yeah, that's an important point. I think I don't know how conscious that's been for me. There's been points where I think so my company's not as big as yours. There's been points where I've been up to 12 team members, and it took a few months of watching the money go down to go, wait a minute, more is going out here than is coming in. So a few things. There's one on making sure the roles that you're bringing on are all contributing to the sales process. Not all of them, but as much as consciously possible. Just as an extreme example, the offices I was just at in Miami, every person there, even the virtual assistants, all of them have a selling role, and they'll all make commission if they're selling. Like, so literally everyone that works there is incentivized to be selling. Not that that's a model we should all take, but it's a mindset we should borrow from. And then in my case, it was focusing on our highest value clients. And I was serving multiple market segments, a VIP high end, and then kind of a mid-level. And I made the conscious decision. I was working with VIP clients, and then I was running a group program at a lower cost offer. And that would be an 8-week cohort of folks going through. And at the end of last year, I was like, I had a month to fill another group. And I was like, what if I put all that effort into just getting VIP clients? Mm-hmm. And I set a target at the time of 6 by the end of the year, which I hit. And I was like, that was way easier. I'm just going to only focus on the VIPs. And that required less team member power, less coaches, far less sales calls. So it was a conscious decision to simplify and make more revenue. And that also shifts your strategy too. What rooms do you need to be in where you're your ideal clients are. So yeah, I've never, I guess I did feel cool saying I had 12 employees, but I feel way cooler having money in the bank.
Exactly. Yes, and that's what I want people to understand, that you don't have to be a huge employer to make money. And at the end of the day, it is your obligation to actually be profitable, because if you go bankrupt, either you can try again. Of course, it's going to be traumatic. It happened to me. I almost went bankrupt with my first business in the 90s. Or you go back and get a job, which is also fine. But the more entrepreneurs we have, I believe the better we respect the freedom of our countries. Because I truly believe that entrepreneurship is what creates freedom in these economies, right?
It creates freedom and opportunity. And I think another key point, which I'm personally even working to get better at, is let the numbers do the talking, checking in on the numbers, looking at reports and letting those guide your decision-making. Because my solution to all kinds of things for years is, oh, no worries, I'll just go make another sale. It's easy for me to do. But if I'm not being a good steward of the resources and strategically looking at where money's going, then I'm or investing or avoiding big tax bills or things like that. That's simply a Band-Aid. You need to consciously put time in on the numbers so that you're operating something that's engineered for success and making decisions. Are we hitting the numbers we're targeting? So you're not flying blind and just running out making sales.
You make a great point, and this alone could actually make you succeed or fail. Running those numbers. I was talking with a good friend of mine. He runs a $200 million company, almost 200 million, and he shows me his CFO sends him a text every day with the balance in the line of credit, the balance in the bank account, and the accounts receivables, the total, and accounts payable. Like 4 pieces of data every single day, and they're almost $200 million. So that doesn't change. It doesn't matter if you are a consultant by yourself or if you have 1,000 people. If you don't take care of the bottom line, eventually you'll bleed to death, right?
Yeah. So like in my case, I've known that's been a weak point for me because I'm fine. I was fine with the Band-Aid. I'll go make 2 sales by tomorrow. But it's not a smart way to operate. So I'm consciously, there's a woman hiring me this month, and her specialty is helping businesses manage their money better. I'm going to hire her. So these are being aware of your strengths and areas you can improve, and then consciously overcoming your ego and go, cool, help me turn this weakness into a strength.
That's beautiful. Charles, brother, thank you so much for your time. I don't want to abuse it. I know you're a super busy guy. One last question before we end the podcast. Amazing podcast, by the way. I knew it was going to be. If you had access to a billboard right on top of the busiest highway on earth, what were you writing?
Relationships are everything. It's everything in your personal life. If you look at anything that's ever provided you value, it's your relationships with your parents, with your kids, with your family, with your employees, with your clients. Even, you and I spend time at some unique, cool masterminds with some very successful people. And let's say someone goes and exits their company for 200 million or something, and they're hanging out on their yacht. If they're on that yacht by themselves, how fun is that going to be?
Yep.
It's not going to be fun at all. So bringing people with you, including people, finding ways to strengthen relationships, finding ways to stay in touch and connected, and providing value and being present when you're with people. Relationships are everything that gives life value and meaning. So I would simply remind people of that.
That's a beautiful thing. Thank you so much. We're probably gonna be doing a book just on quotes from all our guests, and I would love to have yours in there with your name on it. It's a beautiful quote. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure, David. Thank you so much for having me.
Brother, if people would like to learn more about joint ventures and how to exponentiate their business with this beautiful strategy that you teach, how can they find you online?
You can head over to charlesbyrd.com, BYRD. And on there, there's a link to book a chat with me if you'd like, and you can learn more about joint ventures and my support of companies wanting to build this into the DNA of their business.
Beautiful. Brother, thank you so much for being here. Have a wonderful rest of the week. I keep getting this world, making it a better place. Thank you. Blessings.
All right. Thank you.
That's all for today's episode of the Break Free Podcast. Head on over to iTunes and subscribe to the show. Starting your own business can be tough, but it doesn't have to be. Visit davidmansilla.com to pick up a copy of the #1 international best-selling book, Breaking Out of Corporate Jail. Expand what you consider to be possible and reach your full potential. And join us on the next episode.